Ladies and gentlemen, this is episode number 2 of the RealTop Podcast. We are here in Boston, Massachusetts. We're going to interview someone that I admire quite a bit, a gentleman by the name of Mario Papathanasiou. And I know I said that right. I got that perfect. And I'm going to take you through a brief intro of who Mario is, and then we're going to have a blast. Mario, thank you for joining us here.
Nikitas, thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to talk with you today.
We're pumped. So guys, Mario, give you a quick intro. It's pretty amazing. He's had a pretty awesome run from behind the booth to the front of the boardroom. Sonic Branding, his company, Sonic Branding strategist and DJ Mario Papathanasiou is a selector of choice for the world's most elite clientele. More than a decade ago, Mario started off DJing events in Boston and Los Angeles and has performed at hundreds of events for brands such as Armani, Hugo Boss, Vogue Magazine, Cisco Systems, Warner Brothers, A+E Television Network, and has performed with artists such as Bruno Mars, Imagine Dragons, Train, and Lenny Kravitz. Mario, a native of Boston, is a graduate of Emerson College, where he majored in communications and radio. He spent 4 years as an on-air radio host at WERS 88.9 FM, the #1 rated college radio station in the country. And by the way, I listen in pretty religiously to that, just an FYI.
Nice.
5 years ago, Mario started taking his selection skills into a number of different business verticals. He's programmed background music for such clients as the Langham Hotel, the Fairmont Hotel, Saloniki Restaurants, and dozens of other top businesses. Additional projects in Sonic Branding include runway music for Saks Fifth Avenue, Donna Karan, and Burberry, and scoring a fireworks presentation for VMware at VMworld in San Francisco. Mario, what's up, man?
What's up, man?
Yeah.
We have a little bit of a cozier atmosphere than Starbucks right now, but this is, that's our usual place to chat, but this is fantastic. I'm so excited.
I think the next podcast, we should just do it standing up in the parking lot of podcasts with masks on, just hanging out outside and just do it.
It'll be a little bit of a muffled audio, but yeah, I'm down.
Yeah. So Mario, tell us, we're going to throw a couple of quick hot questions here. Tell us something interesting about yourself most people don't know about you.
I always assume people know about me, but I feel like if you see the last name, you see Papathanasiou, you say, wow, that's Greek, obviously, but I'm actually half Greek and half Polish, first generation. And my mom is from Poland and my dad was from Greece. So random fact about me.
Random fact. What keeps you up at night?
My kids literally keep me up at night. They're God bless them. They're 4 and 5, and we're past the time of like waking up every, few hours to get to them. But in a larger sense, my kids keep me up just thinking about their future and things that I know I do now will help them in the future. So yeah, I honestly, I really do sleep pretty well. There's not too many things that bother me.
Well,
but yeah, my kids
have circles under your eyes like me, so you're doing good. What motivates or inspires you?
Seeing talent, like fresh, real, unabridged talent, that really motivates me in a way that's not competitive. I get inspired from so many different things. So I love the feeling I get when I hear somebody sing a beautiful piece of music, when I read something that an author has written. That's a fantastic way to connect with my brain. Just people in general who have talent and are doing things with it really inspire me in my own life.
What is a quote that you live by?
My dad actually said this to me. Don't wait for tomorrow to do what you can do today. Don't wait for everything to be perfect. Use all the skills and tools that you have right now at your disposal to do what you want to do. Take action. And it's kind of like loosely quoting him, but the gist of it is that many times, myself included, I say that I can't do whatever it is because I don't have the right tools. And in my world, it might mean a particular piece of production or waiting for that technology that I've been wanting to get. And the truth of the matter is that you can overcome many deficiencies that you have in resources with just a little extra hard work. So that's kind of been my mantra and quote that I think about all the time. It's the reason why I named my company Every Second Counts, which holds true for all the work that I do. But it's really important because taking action is the most important part about action itself, and being successful as an entrepreneur. Just making that decision. Obviously, it has to be a thoughtful, intellectual decision and with consideration of many things, but not to wait, to use what you have now and get it done is kind of like how I live my life.
There's this, there are a couple of quotes that I want to piggyback off of what you just said. And one of them was something along the lines of like, don't let perfection get in the way of progress, like get started. And there's so much truth to that. And I'll tell you, even from starting this podcast, if you look at episode number 1, I mean, it's a bloodbath. And I'm sure someone, at episode 200, looking back at this, they're going to be like, hey, what's up with your window in the background and the lighting and the guy dancing on an island behind you? So whatever, we're just going for it, man. Well, Mario, I'm curious. And I love that quote. And by the way, I love the name of your company. I've always known you as just Mario. So just like your branding is awesome. What are you up to these days? Like what's going on in January 15th, 2021? What are you up to?
Well, there's always music in my mind. There's always things that I'm working on. My business, Every Second Counts, was largely and predominantly about events. And since March 13th of 2020, there's been restrictions in place because of COVID where that can't happen. So beyond having my company, Every Second Counts, I am the music director of a restaurant group in Boston. We have 7 properties, restaurants mostly, and then there's a dance club in there too. So pre-COVID, I was there a lot in terms of performing at the space and making sure that everything was kind of in line, overseeing some music there, but mostly being hands-on with the performance aspect of it, managing other DJs who perform there. I've been really lucky and blessed that through the COVID, restrictions and shutdown, that this restaurant group really put a priority on, they always do, on their service and quality of product, but music is really important to them. So I was able to work, from May through December when we moved back to, this is so confusing, phase 2, step 2, where you can only have a certain amount of people in the restaurant. So I've been not there so much at all since December. So my mind is now refocusing on kind of how to pivot again and include what I'm doing and think about, and creating action to ideas that I've had over the last year or 2 years.
Mario, what's going on? Like, you said 8 properties or 9 properties, I forget. How many of those? Group? Yeah, how many of those are fully open right now? Are they all open?
They're all open, but open with restrictions. When we first shut down in March, I think it was from March and until May, where no restaurants were open in Boston, right? And then they opened with guidelines and restrictions, a certain amount of capacity. There were rules in place on how to, if you're in the service industry, service your customers and your clients. And I remember it was Cinco de Mayo when our owner contacted me and said, hey, we're going to do a little something, a food demonstration outside of one of our spots. Can you do music for it? I said, I've been waiting 2 months for you to ask me this. Yes, I'll be there. So, from that point on, I haven't been in my whole life ever more proud of an organization on how they handle things. So you get this playbook from the government, from our governor and from the city. There's mandates and things that you have to follow, but to have an actionable plan and see how it materializes is, different for every organization and every business. And our group in particular does an outstanding job in terms of how they handle it. And it's almost like a regiment, an army regiment, that every single time they do it the same way, where a group of customers come in, they sanitize the tables, they sit, there's all these restrictions about wearing masks and what you can do sitting down and then standing up. But the fact that, and this was in the middle of the summer, that, 100-degree days, all the, from the bus boys to the servers to the bartenders to the management to myself included, we're in this kind of, army of like doing things to the best of our ability every single time. And that's what they've been doing. And, through the course of the pandemic, there's restrictions on how many people they can let into the space. And I never knew how hard that was to achieve on a consistent basis. And to know, I didn't know who was doing that. And to be honest with you, I haven't been out too many times to other establishments since the lockdown, but I have been, and going to other places, I know not everybody does it the way that our group does it. So I'm super proud of our team. And even with restrictions, they do a great job.
That's pretty phenomenal. And you know what? Your attitude's pretty phenomenal. I mean, considering what's been happening the last few months in the industry that you're in, you're in the restaurant business that, or your company services the restaurant industry. That seems to be a main focus. And considering the major hit that the restaurant industry has taken, you're just so darn optimistic, and it's pretty awesome, man. So you've got such a great attitude. What do you think is, let's talk a little bit more. I mean, we know where you are today, but, aside from the restaurant group, seeing that you have to pivot, what does a pivot look like? Is it a short-term pivot? Are you getting more time? I know for myself, sitting in my cube here, I'm becoming a lot more resourceful and coming up with creative ideas because it just seems to be where my brain's going. What does that look like for you, the pivot?
The pivot for me right now is technically like my space. I have my ESC headquarters that I established in 2019, at the end of 2019. And then right around that same time that I had this space and finished building it out and putting all this furniture in, I got the job as a music director. So I focused a lot of my energy on that. And then since the pandemic, and then now, moving back in terms of the phase where I can't really even be in the locations anymore performing, I'm pivoting again and kind of refocusing my energy here at home base for me. There have been a number of clients pre-pandemic and throughout the pandemic soliciting ways to make their businesses better and sound better. And that's kind of what I do. So for me, I started playing music a long time ago. While I was in high school, my fake ID brought me into a lot of the clubs in Boston, and I was inspired by so many DJs, trips to Greece.
My fake ID brought me into clubs that you were DJing at, just for the record. I just want to put that out there.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So, I have influences that run, really kind of like embedded into my soul. And I realized at a very young age that that's what I wanted to do. I kind of wanted to be that person that controlled the vibe in the room. And I've always had an eclectic taste in music across the board in many different genres. And it wasn't until I went to Emerson, studied communications, and school's a lot about learning, but it's also about the people that you meet. Emerson in particular, as great as it was academically, it's focus. The focus is about working and collaborating. And that's what I honed for 4 years. And I met a great group of people who turn out now to be famous actors and producers and directors and musicians and all these people across, the country and in the world that I've kept in contact. Yeah, it's the network, but it's how you work with these people. So, going through a little bit of my history, I moved to Los Angeles right after college, and I lived there for 3 years. And I worked for Warner Brothers, and I saw this scale and this level of these things that I was reading and studying in my textbook in a billion-dollar company, multi-billion-dollar company. And I saw really how good ideas come to fruition. So, after I left Los Angeles, moved back to Boston, I had the opportunity to get a job as a music director of a hotel in Boston. And we opened up a pretty amazing lounge. And that was the first time in my life where I took all my book smarts and
that,
things.
by the way?
That was the Langham Hotel.
Langham Hotel.
Bond was the name of the space. And it was the first time that I could use all of those resources and tools that I had and put it together. My powers of observation and things that I learned in school in Emerson studying communications, my love for music, my ability to perform and weave hours and hours of music together, this massive library that I've amassed through my years of DJing, but also through my network of Emerson alumni. We share a lot of music. So there were things that I had in my repertoire that I really couldn't play in a club, but that restaurant setting is really where I learned that people are sitting there and enjoying themselves. And I would be involved with the communications aspect of it as well. I would help create these radio commercials that were all over Boston, these transit spots that we did, these billboards. I helped to create all those things, literally designing and writing all the copy. And it was such an enlightening moment for me working there. I was there as the music director for a little over 3 years, that I believed in myself more. And I've always believed in myself, but knowing that I could do this on a different level, that, for me, I never had a superlative DJ name. It's always been Mario the DJ. And I want that mark of me being a skilled professional, creative professional, but I also want to enhance the business that I'm working for. It's kind of like a no-brainer. If they don't do well, I don't do well. With marketing, what you're doing, a lot of businesses, especially during these times, it's the first thing that they cut. So how do I make myself indispensable? And it's just been working hard and expanding my knowledge of my creative process, but also being involved with the other facets of the business. So after I left the Langham, I started ESC and I did the music directing thing.
How long ago was that, Mario?
That was in 2012.
2012. I have a question for you, and actually kind of a comment. And I've always been intrigued by DJs because I was always into music. I love dancing. I was the guy in the room that would show up at the club, and when all the girls were dancing by themselves, I was the only one with the courage to go up and dance with them, and it worked out pretty well for me. Now,
my man,
yeah, let's do this, but I was at a corporate event not that long ago, and you were the DJ. And one thing I recall, this was I won't name names, but this was a room full of attorneys, a lot of stiffs. These are attorneys, a lot of suits, a lot of starch in their shirt. They're, they weren't ready to like moonwalk in that place. And then I noticed as the night progresses, the drinks were pouring, as everyone was networking, the music started changing, the vibe started changing. And I noticed you were able to get these working stiffs, which everyone's got a soul, everyone's got inside of them. You were able to get them to start partying. Like it turned into a party. It turned into what could have easily been like, you're 22 years old, you're at a lounge, and it's just before 2 a.m. in Boston. And it's like, we got 5 minutes left. Let's party like it's the last night of our lives, right? And my kudos to you for doing that. I had a lot of fun. But my question is, when you're going into an event like that, and you've got 500 of these professionals, how much of what you're doing is pre-planned, and how much of what you're doing is reading the room, reading the vibe, and adjusting the music, the volume, the beat to that group, and kind of bringing them to, because I felt like you were bringing them to that point and they didn't even know it, almost like hypnosis. What's your mix? Like, how does that happen? How does it get planned and then executed?
The easiest analogy I could do is like, if I'm a painter, I bring my palette, I bring all my colors, and I paint there. I don't make that painting ahead of time and then walk into the room and say, here's what I created. I have years of experience in terms of building libraries of music. So technology helps me a tremendous amount. Before, it was me carrying crates of records, like these 3,000 records that are sitting next to me that I have to put on the shelves. But technology now allows me to do that digitally, and has been like that for a long time. Since 2006, I've been on a system called Serato. So I can organize and I can be super specific, like in terms of genre and making things. But I realized at that point that was actually too complicated for me to go into a room and have all these, 50 folders of house music or 50 folders of hip hop and, all these things. I program more now, where, because I play so many events in different rooms, that I look through all those genre specific folders and I'll make a folder for that event. And I might subdivide it into two categories, early and late. And in the early section, I don't put slow music. I put music that I don't think are super hits where people are going to go crazy to, because I don't want that to happen. I don't want it to be where, you know,
You
I
don't want it to
have
fizzle out
people.
early.
I don't want it to fizzle out early. I was going to use the analogy, blow my load early. It's a kid's show. We don't want to do that. No, but I want to progress. You know, you want people to feel comfortable. I know what I'm there for. I'm there to make that room better, right? So again, for like, you know, clients that I have in the hospitality business, I always say that, hey, if you control the quality of product in terms of your food and your drink and your service, and I accompany that, that I can make it better. So to your question of how I progress the night, I know when people first walk in, not everybody is super motivated to, you know, start networking. A lot of times it's a work function. People don't really want to be there, or if they are there, they might need to have a drink or two to get loose enough where they can contribute to the vibe. So I make it easy for them. It's, you know, loungy, it's fun, it's cool. And I use my powers of observation to see the people in the room and try different things. You get reactions from people. It's kind of like fishing. You see what works and what doesn't work. But you know, it's all about time. So as the night progresses, I always think about it, also the analogy about landing a plane. And I tell all my clients, like, I want to know the exact end time, because I don't want to just end it. I want to land the plane in a way where it's super comfortable. So I want to create moments. So in the early part of the night, I might be playing things like funk and soul and things you may not have ever heard, or different versions of songs that you may know. But towards the end of the night, when I want people on the dance floor, it's bangers, it's hits, it's like really like big sounds. The scope of the music can change into like more energy. The beats per minute increase, and you know, after doing this for so long, you realize that those specific songs are kind of tools in your arsenal to create these moments. And that's what really it's about. It's, you know, those moments when people are singing, you look at the demographic and you see the age group of the people and you say, oh, I know they know this song, or I think they know this song, and you try it out and they know it. And then, you know, for me, the mixes happen faster. Transitions might happen technically 30 seconds or 60 seconds, a different song, a different moment. So
That's
you're getting all
phenomenal.
these feelings, and then you watch and you see that people's energy change and it increases.
Mario, I want to jump in the DeLorean for a second with you,
Nice,
right?
nice.
And knowing we come from a similar background, you know, same church, same, you know, almost the same block. I want to jump in the DeLorean and go back there for a little bit. And I want to go far back too. You know, we could
All
easily
right.
jump into our 20s, but I want to go back to kind of like when the light bulb, went off for you, or went on for you in, you know, in what at what point did you not only find the love for your craft and for music, but also, and this is two questions actually, accompanying that, when did you decide to turn it into your profession, and not only just a profession but an entrepreneurial journey? So let's actually stick with question number one, jumping into the DeLorean, going back. When did this, I'm going to call it an obsession, because you got to be obsessed to take something like what you're doing to this
Definitely.
level, and to see it through, is impressive. So let's start at the beginning. Tell me about your journey.
I remember a specific moment. I was 16 years old in a dance club in Boston, listening to a really amazing local DJ, uh, put
What
two
club, what
songs
DJ?
together. It was Club Europa. It was DJ Manolo.
Whoa,
It
man.
was a Wednesday international
Of
night.
course. Because
I
why do
was
you have to go
16
to
and a
work
half,
on a Thursday?
right? And I heard him mix what some Euro house song, which was what he played, house music, with like a breakbeat kind of song from a movie called Electric Boogaloo, Breaking Two Electric Boogaloo. The song was like a George Kant's song called Dindada. And I've known that song because I watched the movie in the 80s when I was growing up, and it's kind of hip hop-ish, but it blew my mind that he was putting those two songs together in a dance club where it was always kind of just like dance music and whatever's
He
new.
was
And the
phenomenal.
fact that he took the past and melded it with the present blew my mind. And really, I remember how it sounds. I remember the vibe of the room. And because that thought got into my head and I had all these creative thoughts, I said, wow, that's amazing. That's kind of what I want to do. And
Did you already
I,
have equipment at that point? Were
I
you
did
already?
not. I did not. That kind of leads me to the second part of your question in terms of entrepreneur and how did I bring that to a business. The entrepreneurial spirit is in my DNA. My family owned and operated a gas station repair shop for over 30 years, and that's really where I grew up. I spent my summer vacations there. I practiced for the SATs there. I applied for college there. Like, I did all my learning and everything else, but I also had to kind of pull my weight and help my family because not like, unlike other people that I knew and other friends that I had in school, we didn't have generations here of maybe wealth or opportunities. Both my parents came without knowing too much English. Both came, without a great amount of education. My mom came when she was a little bit younger, so she did go to high school here. My dad didn't. He had very little education, but he was the smartest man that I ever knew. And the way he handled himself in business, for the technical aspect of what he did, he was an artist, and that really inspired me. He had a craftsmanship that inspired me. And when I realized that music is something that I loved and wanted to do, I applied all those things, the hard work, dedication, sacrifice, and technical knowledge that you needed to have. And I applied that to what I was doing. And I found that I got really good results, from playing high school proms and baptisms and graduation parties when I was first starting out. And thankfully, I had a bunch of friends who loved going out as well, and they helped me with the production part of it. They would be carrying speakers and records and all that sort of stuff with me, and I realized that's something that I love to do. So I took that kind of knowledge that I had as an entrepreneur and a small business owner, and I included into what I was doing, and I found good results, and I just kind of progressed and continued with it.
What was your first paid gig and at what age and how much?
All right. So again, going back to like, did I have equipment or not? So when I realized I wanted to DJ, I wanted to get equipment, and I loved records and I loved turntables, but to have enough records to DJ a whole night was super expensive. I would not be able to do that. So this is in the mid 90s. I graduated high school in 96. And my last 2 years of high school, I had been going to the clubs. I'm like, okay, this is what I want to do. And I told my parents, I said, this is what I want. And it's something that needed resources. I needed to have these tools to accomplish my goal. And, very much like a Greek dad would, he said, you can have whatever you want. You just have to work for it. So I had a particular goal in mind. I had a number where I needed to get to go get that equipment. And I got, probably 60% of the way there in terms of saving money. It took me a little over a year to do it. And then my dad bankrolled me for the rest of it. And he said, you can pay me back whenever you start making money. Of course, he never took any of that money. He just wanted me to start working for it. It wasn't going to be like the drum set that sat in my basement. And very early on, I got a gig DJing a graduation party, like right after high school, because that was my demographic. All my friends were graduating high school, and, I kind of rolled with that. And when I went into college, the other people that I knew who were younger than me were, class presidents or members of organizations in their high school. So I would DJ those parties. And then, of course, the infamous Goya dances, which are like, the youth group of the Greek Orthodox Church. I went on a circuit. I would do every single town and city, with whatever driving distance I could, from Rhode Island to Worcester to all these towns, in the greater Boston area. I would do all of those parties and dances. And I built a little bit of a following, and that following kind of moved with me when I started getting hired at clubs. I was at Emerson College in Boston.
And just for our listeners, guys, this is the 90s. This is pre-Instagram. This is pre-YouTube. This is no social media. I don't assume you were running TV commercials, right?
No.
This was marketing in its truest sense, where you didn't have all these, you weren't able to amplify your message like you can today so easily and so inexpensively. And you did it by focusing on your product and your network. And it goes to show, and look how far you've come. So it's just something to think about for some of you younger listeners that, oh, I don't know where I'm going to get my next client. There was a time before an ad. There was a time before a TikTok post. Like, and Mario is a testament to that. And that's pretty remarkable, man.
I always feel and think about this way. My next client is in the room listening to me right now. I've always approached how I play in that way, even if it's for something that seemed like, oh, this is just a small reception, it doesn't matter. I really go hard every single time I play. And it's been a long time. I've been doing this for a while. And that's kind of how I know I'm doing what I love and what I'm supposed to be doing. That can change tomorrow with the plight of the world right now. But as long as I'm still have my hands on my own success, that's why I'm an entrepreneur. I kind of operate that way. And my career and progressing to this and where I am now is an evolution of me playing that first gig, that high school party, because I got my next gig from people who were there. And then when I built up those skills, I was in school, I was at Emerson, I got on the radio, and I was around all these other DJs, and I was able to kind of hone my skills a little bit more and learn from everybody that I was around. And being on the radio, people in Boston heard me. So these club promoters were like, hey, we heard you on the radio. Do you want to play in our clubs? And I got my first break at a club in Boston in 1997. And from that point on, I've really been DJing pretty much, at least weekly, 3-4 times a week since that time. There have been moments in my life where I've, alleviated that because of business reasons of me focusing on ESC and not being out in the club so much, getting married and starting a family. That kind of, derailed me from being in the clubs. But being in a club allowed me to have access to more clients, more people heard me. And as I was playing these bigger and nicer places, I realized that my skills were getting better. I also realized that was the farm system for my other clients. So these people that were out there partying on one night in Boston, hanging out, there might have been a couple who was getting married, and they would say, "Hey, do you do weddings?" I say, "I absolutely DJ weddings." And it was a farm system for me to have my event business kind of
talk about like
forward.
an ultimate free trial. Like they get to experience what you're all about for free, and you get hundreds of these people in the room. I have this
Right.
theory. I actually think the world would be better off without advertising. And even though I'm in the marketing space and this is what I do day to day, I think it would be an interesting experiment if one day the government turned around and said, hey, there's no such thing as ads allowed for 1 week. No commercials, no radio, no Facebook, no Google, no nothing. And the reason I say that is imagine how good businesses will become. Imagine how good a business has to be knowing that they're only as good as the last client that they help, the last client they service, the experience they're bringing to the table, and knowing that has to equate to the next client. Like your clients need to give birth to your next clients only. And I think the world would be this is total theory. It's, I don't know if it's the right thing. I'm probably cannibalizing myself, but I think the world would be better off. You see a picture of that old craftsman in Italy in an alley that makes the best shoes ever. He doesn't have a sign on the door. He's only as good as the last pair of shoes that he sends out the door. And hopefully someone sees those and says, wow, those are great. Where did you get them? And it's interesting with what you do. It's a similar thing. You don't need to run ads. And it's something that I want to just remind our listeners, if you're a young entrepreneur, you got to market yourself. You got to put yourself out there. There's no question about that. But I think people forget that the most important thing you could do in your marketing is actually deliver a product that is so damn good. And I actually believe it's more important than the customer service journey. So if you can deliver a product that is so damn good, look at you, look at Apple. Apple has the worst freaking customer service on earth, but the product is so damn good that you're going back for more. And that seems to be, I'm putting you up there with Apple, by the way. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I know. I was about to say, you just put me in the same sentence as Apple. I'm good. We're good.
Mario and Steve Jobs here. Steve Jobs wasn't available for
No,
this podcast.
to your point, that's actually really the only way that I've progressed through my career is by being really attentive to my clients' needs. So you brought up the point, this, when I started in the early part of my career, it's before all of this technology, which you can utilize your skill and you can amplify to the world. My skill was being able to be consistent and to be available. Consistency and availability are the key components to my business, where every single time I play, I go 110%. And being available for my clients. For me, it's the business owner. He doesn't care, before didn't care if I had ads out or what my following was. He wanted the people, or he or she wanted the people in the room to feel something and have a good time. And I was able to do that on a consistent basis. And then you always have, in many aspects of business, people that come to you with an emergency. Hey, can you do this for me? And most of the time, I find ways to either service them myself or bring on colleagues and people that I work with to be able to service them. But I usually never just pass people off. I always try to have my hands on something, because if I know the client, I know what they like and I know what they're looking for, I might, prompt my colleague or somebody else that I know that's going to handle the execution of, delivering the music. I, work with them on, creating whatever music playlist that I think that client might want. And that sort of consistency and availability snowballs. And it really is a testament to getting to know yourself and what you can do. I had a professor at Emerson that always told me, and he's the guy that actually came up with so many like slogans that we know and love today, like choosy moms, choose Jif, and don't squeeze the Charmin. He's the guy that made that
Stop
stuff
it.
in one of my advertising classes. But he was always tells, never tell a client that you can do something that you can't do. He's like, but don't be afraid to tell a client that you can do something that you haven't done. And he said, a lot of times in this world, he would tell the class that many great things have happened when someone takes a leap. It's the basic philosophy of, believe in yourself and bet on yourself, where if I have never done that as a paying job to do, I don't know whatever the client's asking me for, but I know I can do it. Don't be afraid to tell that client, hey, I can do that for you. And then take the risk, bet on yourself, and try to do it. Obviously, there's room for failure in that, but failure in my world and in a lot of business world is only a way for you to learn. So I don't look at failure. I mean, there's catastrophic failures, don't get me wrong, but you hear a lot of entrepreneurs talking about it, like this ratio of like failure and success, that you always want to be working on things. Like different companies have, maybe a third of what you try may fail, but that's great because maybe 1 in 3 will work. Like focusing 70% on your energy on things that are, you're going to be able to be successful on, 20% on things that might be in your wheelhouse, but it's a different component of how you're doing things. Like for me, it's like a different vertical. It's like, programming music for a mall, or when I scored a fireworks presentation, like I had never done that. My client asked me, I was performing in San Francisco for a really large tech company. It's probably like 15,000 people at this party. And they said the end of the party is going to have a fireworks presentation. And I was like, do you have music for that? And they said, no. I was like, oh, they're like, can you score a fireworks presentation? I said, sure. And I'd never done that. So I did the research. I was like, how long is it going to be? And I created a score and I finished my show. And then, in AT&T Stadium in San Francisco, where
Wow.
there was thousands and thousands of people, this firework presentation goes off, and it's the music that I created. And I started with this crazy orchestral piece that went into whatever big pop song there was that time, and then like kept them the music going. And to my teacher's credit, that seed was planted in my brain and kind of never left me. Like, don't be afraid to do or try something that you know you can do or have faith that you can do, even if you haven't done it before or have actually technically been paid for. He's like, don't lie on your resume, but if you think you can do something, do it, because they'll push yourself.
Mario, talking about being in AT&T Stadium, 15,000 people. I've never experienced anything like that. What is my assumption is that the feeling is a high, and if it is a high, is, or is it? Is there a certain high when you went out on stage and you had 1,000 people dancing to your beat? Like, what was that feeling like?
It's amazing. It feels good because, for me, when I perform, I'm like a prism. So I'll kind of spread that white light into a beautiful rainbow, and the more light that I receive, the brighter the colors get. So when I see people and get that energy, my energy increases. I could be here for hours playing for myself and no audience, and I'll still have a great time. But it's so much more fulfilling to me when I can motivate and see that, people enjoy themselves and enjoying moments that I create or put on that song that'll help them remember a time in their life where they felt something and they remember that feeling. I've been lucky enough to have some really great clients. And again, this is a pre-COVID world where I would travel around the country to play these corporate events. One of which was a fantastic event that I did in Las Vegas at Vegas Motor Speedway. The client is a huge tech client. It was about 30,000 people. I was opening for Bruno Mars.
30,000 people.
30,000 people.
Were
Vegas
you
Motor
shaking?
Speedway.
Were you nervous? Like, what happens?
Honestly, I don't want to say like to sound like that. I don't really get nervous just because
I'm nervous just talking to you. Never mind 30,000 people.
I do get nervous. You know why? Because I don't get nervous for myself and my abilities. I get nervous for the equipment. And that particular day in Vegas in July, it was 115 degrees outside. I had turntables and a mixer and my laptop. And at sound check, my laptop failed. I don't know if you've ever had your laptop give you that flashing light says overheating and it just shuts off.
Oh my God.
So in sound check, that happened. So we were at basically in Vegas Motor Speedway is
and
outside.
Not to cut you off, but my next question was going to be like, tell us about one of your entrepreneurial nightmares. So maybe we can throw this in the mix here.
Yeah. So we're in the middle of the desert, basically, as Vegas is, but this is probably like 20 miles off the strip. It's north of the strip. So all the guests had to come by buses. So there were hundreds of buses with hundreds of people that just descended on this place for this event. And I'm watching all these buses roll up and knowing that my equipment had just failed. So that's where it's like you're working with a team of people, and that's why it's always about the team. It's always about the people that you work with, bring it all together. So I'm like, okay, I have to cool this stuff down. How am I going to cool this stuff down and still perform? So I run into the kitchen and I was asking the chef, I said, hey, is there anything that I could do to cool these things down? Do you have anything that I could put, like buckets of ice and a fan? He's like, well, we have these diamond plated boxes that we fill with ice, and we actually have them in the freezer frozen that we do our dessert displays on. So we'll put that box out there and then put the desserts on top of the box. I'm like, God. I'll take 3 of those. So I took 3 of those, put the turntables and my laptop on it, and it allowed me enough time to get the music going. And I also realized that you have to have, this is just like little tips of the trade. You have to have a backup. You have to have something just in case that equipment fails that's in a different source that you can just put. So I had an iPod there with one of my mixes just in case, and I was able to switch back and forth to that. They got me a refrigerator, stick my laptop in the refrigerator for half an hour, get it to cool off, pop it back open. I performed for 6 hours back and forth, just like that, where I was able to segue, put on a mix on, and it was seamless because the crowd didn't even know what was going on. And honestly, they're not there for me. And that's what I realized a long time ago. Like, I love what I do and I think I'm great at what I do, but I'm more about making other brands shine. Just having me execute how I am able to execute at whatever ability I am able to execute at. and having a brand shine, that those people were there for their conference and they had been in, in meetings for a week, and this was their end of their, meeting where they get to have this huge party, but they were also there for Bruno Mars. Like, they're not there to see me, but I'm there to make that room feel good for him to come out, and the room's already primed, and it's almost like a fluffer. You want people to be ready to go. I have to do that for them.
That isn't that is an unbelievable story that 30,000 people are, they're rolling up in buses, hundreds of people, and you've got your laptop in a refrigerator.
That's what makes me afraid, right? Those are things that I don't have control over. So that's what I get nervous about. And even while that was going on, I was like, well, I could probably technically get through that with playing one of my mixes, but it would have crushed me because that was like such a big gig for me. And I'm like, I want to perform for that. Like, I want to be able to do that. And I have a little piece of video that I took at the end of the night, where they said, okay, it's over, you got to stop playing music. And there was like thousands of people that left the Bruno Mars concert and were walking back to their buses, like tens of thousands of people. And I'm still jamming, and they're like, you have to shut down the music. So I shut it down, and there was like 3,000 people in front of me singing the kind of the last song that I was playing, like, oh. And they were like, one more song. And I'm like, see, I wouldn't have been able to do that if I just rocked the mix the whole time. So that I never pre-plan. I guess going back to your other questions, I always like to do it live, do any of the mixes, because it's more real. Like, I feel like people can feel it. They can sniff you out. They'll know that it's not real. I'm not a button pusher. I'm kind of like the person that does it in live and in color.
A lot of guys will go through some sort of entrepreneurial journey, and they think the measurement of their success is always going to be something you can kind of like calculate on a spreadsheet. And I get it, you got to make a living for sure, but there's something about the satisfied client, the feedback that you're getting from people that you're making happy and you're giving real value to. And that's what you're doing. You're creating this value, which is entertainment. You're letting people get away from their problems for a couple of hours, and it's a very special thing. And it's just amazing, Mari. And that's a big reason why I wanted to get you on the show today. I really admire people that can take their art and turn it into a business. And you are you're a rare breed, because not everyone can do that. I know a lot of people that love playing an instrument, or they love singing, or they love doing something artistic, but they don't know how to monetize it, or quite simply, they don't have the guts to turn that into a career. And they always kind of put it off to the wayside, and they focus on some boring job. And to be quite honest, they're kind of miserable because they prioritize what they can calculate on an Excel spreadsheet as a paycheck over what makes them happy. And life is truly short. Now, I'm curious, it's a weird time, and let's call it an anomaly, God willing, right? But what does the future hold? What does the future hold for your company and for you?
Well, things that I'd been thinking about pre-pandemic were, we were talking about this before we got on, a lot of my clients want to include podcasting and ways to speak to their customers and clients through recorded mediums, either a video or audio podcasts. So I created my space to be conducive for that sort of collaborative work. And right now, because of restrictions, that's not going to happen. So I am optimistic that, once the 60% of the population gets vaccinated and we can get back kind of to what was before our COVID shutdown, that I'll be able to articulate that and make that happen in my space, in my studio space. For me, it's for the last 10 years, I've always thought about making what I do bigger than myself. I know for a fact that when I perform and produce, I'm able to do it at a really high level, but that all goes away if one day I can't work and I have a family and I want to be able to provide for them. So I'm thinking about scaling and how can I do that? So that's what I'm kind of working on right now, is finding ways that I could deliver content, curated content, to people across the world. And I've done that for many clients, throughout the years in many different ways. And technology now allows me to do that in a really great way. We utilize kind of radio software where you're programmed for a radio station, but it becomes kind of like a concentrated radio station for any particular client. It could be a really high-end clothing store. It could be a chain of fast casual restaurants, but being able to hand select and program music. And right now I'm trying to utilize that technology and deliver that content in a way that's more than what you can find on a Spotify or an Apple Music, because I have a lot of clients that love to be able to articulate their brand through music, but to do it in a cost-effective way. So that's what I'm working on. I'm technically working on how do I expand my curating and hand-selected music to scale it vertically, to be able to bring it to more people. And I'm running to roadblocks. It's not really easy right now because my benefit and what I'm really good at is the hand selection. I call our team like human algorithms. We're the opposite of Spotify. A lot of businesses that use this, even if it's a company that does it professionally, curating music, there's not people in a room selecting songs. It's a system where it's like thumbs up, thumbs down, and there's an algorithm that's going to choose your next song. And many of the clients that I speak to and have interviewed and try to build as a resource, the knowledge of what they're looking for, say that, maybe 5 out of 10 songs, 50% of the songs aren't what we're looking for. So to execute that in the right way, you really have to be hands-on. So I'm trying to figure out how to give that hand selected music to them that's cost effective, because that's hours. It's, if you're talking about a business that's open 7 days a week that has 15 hours of operation, how do you do that? How do you program that music? So there's things that we've learned over the last couple years where we're trying to deliver that hand selected music, but in a way that's cost effective for the client and for myself. We're able to do it. So I'm not Spotify, I'm not Apple Music, I'm not Pandora, and my services aren't for everybody. So I can't scale that to the masses. I'm learning now how to scale that to a particular set of clientele. That's what I'm working on.
People get big eyes in business, and not everyone has to be Walmart and Target and Amazon. Not everyone has to go wide. You don't always have to cast a wide net, but you can go kind of deeper on your relationships. You can have a better offering, and you can change how you deliver it. And I'm excited for you. We talked. This was pre-pandemic, and you were telling me about this and your vision for the future. And I remember we were just hanging out at Starbucks, and you're telling me about this, and now my mind was blown. I was like, "Whoa!" And you're way ahead of all this, and it's kudos to you for thinking in this way and for having this open mind. And you didn't think like this because you had to. You actually thought of this way before any of this started, which is pretty damn cool. I'm going to make a prediction, and I'm a history buff, and my prediction is that we're going to have a roaring 2022, end of 2021. If you look at history, post Spanish flu, the roaring 20s were the roaring 20s for a reason. The stock market did great, and people forget about the parties that happened post Spanish flu, the amount of entertainment that people wanted. And I think
they legalized alcohol because of it.
Yeah. Hopefully that doesn't happen again. If so, we're starting a speakeasy in your studio, just for the record. But I think we're going to have this, and I hope we can have this great coming together again, because, similar to church, you stay home and you say a prayer, but it's something about praying with 100 people. And it's the same thing with entertainment. It's the same thing in sharing in the senses. If you have 100 people listening to music together versus one person and headphones on, there's a different vibe to them. It's the same thing with breaking bread. It's blessed. It really is. There's something to it. So I'm really looking forward to partying with you.
Me too.
ASAP. And Mario, I want you to tell our listeners, how can they find you? How can they find your services? Where can they get to you, man?
I have a website. It's escaudio.com. ESC for every second counts, audio, what we do. And that's my website. So I have a bunch of links to Mixcloud pages with my mixes, and then solicitations for services. There's a form there. And then on Instagram, social media is Mario the DJ, Twitter, Mario the DJ, and Instagram, it's Mario the DJ. You know, again, talking to you, who's a social media guy, these are things that I could improve on and do better. And, you know, that's kind of been what I've been thinking about for my future in terms of having a team to help me with stuff like that, because I have content and I have ideas, and I want to be able to share that more with the world and, you know, expand kind of my reach and what I want to do. So if anybody wants to chat, if anybody has questions, if there's young entrepreneurs who are, you know, thinking about things in terms of business, if it's related specifically to DJing and music, I'm there as a resource. I'm there because there have been so many people along the way that have helped me and continuously help me just by having conversations, and being able to do what they do inspires me. So I'm more than willing to be able to communicate and be part of a resource network for other folks.
You're the man, brother. Thanks so much.
You're the man.
I love talking to you, man. I could just talk to you all day. This podcast could go for 10 hours if they let us, you know.
For sure. We'll have a part two.
Awesome, brother. All right, man. I'll see you guys later. And thanks for listening in. See you guys.
Nikitas, thanks for having me, man.
Later, brother.